reason that why I did the monkey illusion or the invisible gorilla thing, and I did it off web because it is copyrighted and not know what kind of problems I get into showing it. So I did it prior to this. But the reason it came about is we were walking around the lake, which we try and do just about every day of the week, and it's a good time to be alone with ourselves, and it's just her and I. It's just nice. And occasionally we take a grandchild, but mostly it's just Margie and I. And it's a good time to just walk and talk and pray. It's a good thing. Young couples should do that too. You should try and find that time where you don't even have even if you have like a date night, which is a good thing, I guess. We never had that when we were, date night was taking the kids to Burger King instead of eating hamburgers at home. But anyhow, it was, you don't really get to concentrate because people are coming. Even if you take a nice date night, your waiters, tips, things come and go and all that kind of stuff. But when you just take the time to just walk your neighborhood or walk around a park or something like that, it's just a good thing. And we're walking, and occasionally, and it hasn't been there for a couple of years, but there's a white swan that comes on this one small lake at Lake Zorinsky. There's a little lake up above the other lake, and it's not much bigger than a pond actually, but this white swan comes. And it just happened that we were talking to our son Bart in California as we were walking. He usually calls us on his way to work, so it's early for him. And we're walking by, and I saw the swan's there, and people are going by. They've got their earplugs in, and they're riding their bikes, and they're running, and some people are just walking and talking and that sort of thing. And I'm trying to get people's attention and say, look, there's a swan over there. It's so beautiful. It's a huge, beautiful white swan. And she's just wonderful to see as she coasts around, and their necks are really curved like that and everything, and it's really cool. And so I'm saying, I'm doing this, as we're walking, I'm going like that, and people are just like totally ignoring me, and I thought it was interesting. A couple people stopped to look, and then they'd stop and they'd look at, they'd stop and look because I pointed. Other people, they're oblivious to me at all. Some people actually made eye contact, but then purposely didn't look because they thought I was maybe tricking them or what, I don't know. And then they had one girl come by. She was kind of jogging, not too fast, but jogging, and she had her eye on the swan the whole time. It's a little dam above the dam where this lake is. It's about a quarter of a mile long, maybe a little over a block long, as you're walking it. So you can watch the swan this whole time. And this girl was just watching the swan the whole time, and I pointed. She didn't even know I was there. She was just watching the swan. And I was telling our son Bart, I says, it's like, I wish I could somehow capture this, because it's like Christianity. We're trying to share Christ with the world, and some people will stop and look. Some people will be interested. A lot of people are busy in their own world, and they don't even know we're there, don't even know we're pointing to Him, don't even know that we're trying to help them see something beautiful in their lives. And then the girl that was so concentrated on him that didn't notice me, it was kind of an interesting relief. It was kind of funny because I felt like a certain level of rejection, because she totally didn't look at me and totally looked at I thought she kind of like, oh yeah, isn't that beautiful? Something that nothing. She was totally focused on the swan. And I wonder, how many Christians are totally focused on Jesus, just totally focused on Jesus, that they don't even see the world around them. The world didn't see the swan. This girl was so focused on the swan, she didn't see the world. And I wonder where we are with regards to that. And I was sharing that with Bart as we were talking and walking, and he says, "Oh, Dad, I hear a sermon coming." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, show them the invisible gorilla video. Show them the invisible gorilla video." And I thought, well, that's the closest I could get to it, of what was happening, and how we don't see what's going on around us. And I almost wonder if somebody could do a Christian video of that, where this youth group is passing the ball back and forth, and Christ actually walks across the screen, and some of the people that are passing the ball follow Christ off the stage. Wouldn't that'd be a cool video. Just, how many of us are really focused on? And I don't know what the it's all done by a psychiatrist. And I don't know. I think he's from the University of Wisconsin or someplace, but I don't know what kind of copyrights he has on that whole idea. But it would be interesting to show in the church, just how many people didn't see Christ at all. Yeah, I was amazed. I thought, and I knew the girl was there, so I was looking for it. But I thought a higher percentage of you, I really didn't think that many people would not see the grill. It was amazing. How many people didn't see the grill again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a lot of people that didn't see the grill. And it really surprised me, but we can be so focused. My problem is I'm not a detail-oriented person, I'm more of a general, so I'm missing the white ball count because it's irrelevant to me. But other people are more detail-oriented. They're not going to miss the number of times those people pass that white ball. And so I applaud you for that. You're probably more detailed than that. But oh my gosh, air conditioning. You better check and see if it's 7 o'clock. It freezes people out. I might turn it up a bit. What's it set on?
70.
What?
70.
70. Why don't you push it up to 70? See if it gets that one. So that's increased off from 60. It's gone up 10 degrees. But anyhow, I just wonder where we are in the whole Christian thing. How focused are we on Christ? Where are we between that girl that couldn't take her eyes off the swan and the people that weren't interested at all? I know that by and large, most of us are the people that stopped and looked at the swan, enjoyed it for a moment, and went on. I don't know how many of us are totally focused on Jesus in our lives. And I learned a lesson from myself that I need to be more focused on Him in everything that I do and everything that I think about and stuff, just like we're so easily distracted. But I want to go on with what we were doing last week before we were rudely interrupted by this message on baptism. No, that's great. I'm glad we had the opportunity to do that. What I did for the people that weren't here last week is I shared the basics of baptism so that we could have a baptismal service without having a class necessarily. So, and if any of you need more input for the young people that are going to get baptized, or if you need personal input on it, come and talk to me. Just come and talk to me. The one thing I want to express and emphasize is that baptism is immersion. That's what the literal Greek word means. Apart from baptism as a church ritual, the sprinkling and that sort of thing, apart from that in Greece, the word baptismo is only used when a ship sinks and it's never going to come back up. It's interesting that what we've done is a word that we're uncomfortable with, because everywhere it says baptism, it would rather say totally immersed, and it's not always totally immersed in water. It can be totally immersed in the Spirit, totally immersed in your relationship with Christ. Where it says in Mark 16, one of the things that some of the religions that believe you have to be baptized to be saved, they use that because it says they accepted Christ and then they were all baptized. Something, and it seems to be a command from God. But actually, literally, the Greek word there means totally immersed. So it's not talking about water baptism. It's talking about being totally immersed as Christ is your Lord. And then you see the miracles happen as a result of that in Mark 16 that it mentions. So it's important that we've been in a place where we said, I've died to myself and I've come back. Some of us have done a baptism partially because it was a ritual that somebody recommended we do after we get saved. Some have been taught that, well, it's a time for me to make an outward testimony of an inward change. And that's fine, but really what's going on is I'm going down underwater because, see, Israel was an arid desert tribe, and they believed if you went under the water, you drowned. 3 times down and you're drowned. If there's a stick nearby, nobody's coming in to get you, because they learned, as we all learned in any kind of swimming classes we took as a kid, is don't try and save somebody because they're going to pull you. They're going to pull you I remember once I was scuba diving with a friend of mine, and he'd give me his tanks, and you're always supposed to check your tanks. And I hadn't really checked my tanks because they were his. I thought they were full. And we were out scuba diving in the middle of the lake, and I was following some bass. It was really cool. There's a whole little, what do you call fish? School? Yeah, school. Not a flock of bass, but yeah, a school of bass. And so I'm following a school of bass. And I'm way out in the middle of the lake and didn't realize it. I'm about 40, 50 feet of water. And all of a sudden my tank, I could tell my tank was going bad. Well, worse than that, it evidently had something else. You know, sometimes if you don't clean the oxygen out of the tanks and refresh them, you can get some weird gases develop in there. And it kind of like laughing gas, I felt kind of silly. You know, I felt funny. You know, there was something going on. And I panicked. And I came up, I realized I was in 50 feet of water, a long ways from shore, with these tanks on my back. And because I had been breathing my own nitrogen, or carbon, whatever you exhale, that I was spacing. And I came up out of the water, and I was yelling to Bernie. I said, Bernie, come get me. You know, the tanks are gone. The tanks are empty. And he said, well, just strip them. I'll go back and get them. Well, thinking childlike, because my brain was not full of oxygen, I couldn't bring myself to strip because, you know, drop the tanks, because I was worried he'd lose his tanks. You know, and here I am with all these tanks and weights on that are trying to pull me down. I don't know if you scuba dive, but you wear weights to keep you down, otherwise you float to the top. So my whole body is trying to sink down into this 50-foot of water, and I'm treading water like crazy to stay. I don't have enough oxygen. I still have the thing in my mouth, and I'm breathing, you know, my own nitrogen or whatever it is. And finally, I have the wherewithal to at least take it out of my mouth. And he said, he yelled, spit, Jim, spit, you know, and that's just get it out of your mouth. And so I'm treading water like crazy, and I said, Bernie, come get me, get me. And he said, no way, man, no way. And he stayed about 10 feet away, and he kept swimming. He said, just follow me to shore, follow me to shore. And he kept following. And what he later says, if I went down under and didn't come back up, then he would have done a rescue, you know. But as long as I could tread water, I would pull him down with me, and we'd both drown. And so we got to the beach, and I was exhausted when I got there. And he said, why didn't you strip the tanks? I said, I don't know, I just had this like childlike thought that I didn't want to lose your tanks. I didn't want to lose your tanks, you know. And it was because if I had stripped them, you know, all you do is pull them off and drop them, and then I could swim to shore. But I was fighting to leave them on with all this weight. And so it's, that's what they saw. They saw Christianity. They saw, even before Christianity, because they were baptized, John the Baptist was baptizing people before Christ even went to the cross for them. It was a real outward profession that I am going to die to me, and I'm going to come back up as a Christian. And I told him that we do baptism, we lower people into the water and all that, but John the Baptist would not have touched Christ. He would not have touched anybody that was being baptized, because he was holy. He was an Essene, probably, or a zealot, and they considered themselves very holy. And they wouldn't touch, and neither would the Pharisees at the mikveh in the city. They wouldn't touch the unclean people. And so if you are repenting, and all these people are repenting of their sin, they actually just go down under, dunk themselves up, and stand up. And if you see it, you'll see in the Bible, it says Christ came up straight away. And that was important, that it was a decision. You went down and stood up, and you were the old person and the new person. And there was a point of demarcation that said, I'm not going back to my old me. I'm not going back to my old me. And it's a physical thing that God wants us to do, because it's got to be a physical thing. One physical thing we do is communion, and the other we do is baptism. That's the only two really physical things, apart from the speaking in tongues as an indicator of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And each one of those three things are demarcations of something that took place. We take communion because we need a visible reminder, a physical, visible reminder of the incredible sacrifice that Christ made for us, not to make us feel guilty, but to appreciate the immensity of God's love, that he would do that for us. And it does two things. One, it reminds us of what we deserve as sinners, and it reminds us of the love and the mercy and grace of God that he would do it for us. So that's why he said, do this in remembrance of me till I return, because he didn't want you to feel guilty. And I was raised in a denomination where it was a guilt thing. Oh, look what Christ has done for you, you should feel terrible. But it's a time of rejoicing. He says, I want you to remember the price that I'm willing to pay for my creation, to be in relationship with me for eternity. The other thing, the baptism, the reason that that's a physical thing is it's a place, a threshold, that the old me has died, and the new me has come back, and the new me is, so if I die, whatever's alive in me today is God. And that's what it was for the Jews even before Christ. They felt like they were holier or more cleansed, not by the water itself, but by internal. Initially it started out, they believed it was a cleansing process. It was strictly like a bathing process after you touched the dead or various other reasons that you got baptized. But later they came to realize that it was a spiritual thing. That's why the Pharisees and the Sadducees were so angry, because they didn't believe that they should be down there. All these Jewish people that were children of Abraham shouldn't be there getting baptized because they're already children of Abraham. So, but it was a threshold where I said, this was me. And so when I say that adults can do this, people can do this multiple times in their life, church tradition has said do it once. But and I'm not saying do it all the time, but if there's something in your heart that says, you know what, it's kind of time for me to say, I'm leaving the old self behind and I'm making the next step. And as I described it as a mountain, it gets narrower. There's fewer and fewer people up there. There's a lot of people that walked by me that didn't see the swan. There was only one girl that walked by and couldn't take her eyes off the swan. And so it's a process. It's a process, and along that way we might hit a plateau or or a valley in our lives, and we say, you know what? I'm still going up. I'm not staying. I'm not settling in this valley. I'm still going up no matter what's going on in my life, no matter the things I've faced. But I want to leave stuff behind me, and I want to walk through this door and go higher on the mountain. And that's why I encourage you to rethink it if you want to. But and then the third, the speaking in tongues. The tongue is and James tries to clarify this. He says, it's the bridle that steers the horse, and it's the rudder that steers the ship. The tongue is the thing that makes us completely different than any other animal on earth, in that we can speak things into existence. We can literally speak things into existence. You speak health and wholeness into your own body. If you're a hypochondriac, every disease that comes along, you've got it, and you speak that, and your body just responds to it. Your body responds to it. And I spoke last week, I said that the smallest subatomic particle that we're aware of right now is called a quark. And they don't know why, but it responds to voice. It responds, and it can't be that it responds to sound, because sound is my voice moving airwaves that impact your ears. But the quark is throughout all of the universe, and it's reacting and responding, and there is no sound out there, which just further leads us to the understanding that God spoke it all into existence, and that the smallest subatomic particle. Now, that's why at CERN in France, when they were doing the great accelerator, people thought, they could blow up the world and all that, and they haven't really got it working that well yet. But they said they were looking for the God plan. What they were trying to discover is why the quark responds to voice. They actually couldn't find the quark until they began to speak about this smaller subatomic particle, and they discovered it after. They thought there was something smaller than the atom, but it wasn't until they began to speak about it that they found the quark. And it's just weird. It's just absolutely weird if you think of it that way. But so we know that God spoke the universe into existence, and it's still being affected by that. And what we don't understand ourselves is that when we speak about ourselves, our body responds to what we speak about ourselves. We have an inner ear and an outer ear. When I'm speaking to you right now, I'm speaking to your outer ear. that is channeled to a certain part of your brain with regards to what you remember and don't remember. You remember less of what I say to you than what you say to yourself. That's why when you listen to a recording of your voice, you say, that's not me. Because you've heard yourself through your inner ear your whole life, not heard yourself as other people hear you. So what I'm speaking to you now has a certain impact on you. But as God had told Joshua, Joshua 1:8, if I get to it, I'll show you. He said, concentrate on this. In fact, go there, Sharon, and we maybe won't even get to a lot of the other stuff, but go to Joshua. It's near the end. It might be the last scripture on what I gave you. I grabbed these papers off my printer. Is Joshua 1:8 on this someone? Be very close to the end. I hope it's there. You don't see it in my notes. I can't bother you. Oh, there it is. Joshua 1:8. Joshua 1:8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall read or meditate on it day and night, so you be careful to do everything in accordance with that was written. Go back to Joshua 1:5. I want to set the scene of what's going on. And I apologize, there are going to be some letters and stuff in here that are notes. It was the last thing I did last night, and I wanted to make sure I got this. But Joshua 1:5, it's quite a ways down here. It's about the 9th page, I think. I don't know how it is on the computer. I can transfer it. No man will be able to stand before you to oppose you as long as you live. Just as I was present with Moses, so will I be with you. The brackets are because this is the Amplified version, so I didn't add those. That's added by the translators in the Amplified. They try and look more at what all the words could possibly mean in the Hebrew. No man will be able to stand before you to oppose you as long as you live. Just as I was present with Moses, so will I be with you. I will not fail you or abandon you. Be strong and confident, courageous, for you will give this people as an inheritance the land which I swore to fathers, ancestors to give them. Do you see what he's saying? He's given Joshua, which of course is the Hebrew word for Jesus, but he's given Joshua the command that nobody's going to be able to stand against you. They're not going to be able to oppose you. You're going to end up influencing the people of Israel to the point that you can give them an inheritance after even Moses was unable to accomplish that. But let's keep going, because there's a qualifier to all this. See, God wants you to be confident in Him. He wants you to have faith in Him. He wants you to trust in Him. But our problem is we think God thinks like we do. And He doesn't. His ways are higher than our ways. And we need to start thinking like He thinks. And we don't do that. That's why we have failures in our relationships. That's why we have problems in our finances. That's why we have problems in our health. Because we don't think of Him. If we have trouble with our finances, it's because we have a scarcity mindset. And He is an abundant God. He says, I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. But see, we don't see Him. He says, you have all the riches in Christ Jesus. We don't believe those things. So we live a life of scarcity, and scarcity tends to foster selfishness. And generosity and planting seeds that will harvest much more, that is understanding that we're not in scarcity. That's the trouble that we face in America today, and the devil knows that. And that's why he's pushing all this climate change and all this thing. Our land and the world has benefited. The world has benefited incredibly from America. I mean, not to draw attention to myself, I was engineering manager where we made the first disc for C drives. In Omaha, Nebraska, we made the first disc for C drives that went throughout the world. That's gone throughout the world. I had the minister of industry from China come and meet with me in secret meetings. We had secret meetings. He was flown in at SAC. It was all cloak and dagger stuff, because he wanted me to build. He wanted me to be the engineer that built him a disc manufacturing plant in Beijing. And we never ended up doing that because he was really playing a game. He was pitting us against IBM. He was trying to get as much information so they could do it themselves. But we weren't smart enough to catch that. But think of all this stuff that was started in America. The transistor, the digital, you know, the chip. All this was American. And now it's worldwide, and the world is prospering as a result of us. So the devil is trying to bring scarcity to us. See, before it was abundant. There's a solution to every problem. There's a solution to every problem. But see, rather than in what we've done in the past is we look for the solution. We look for the solution. We had Dick Tracy talking on his watch in the cartoons when I was a kid. And now we talk to people and he can see them. And now we can see people. We can Skype people. We can talk on our telephones. I'm watching the kids do this and I said, I'll never be able to do that. What I need is a text where you can just talk to text in. Now I've got a phone, I can talk to text in. I don't have to do all that. Because there was problems that can be solved. That's from a mentality of abundance and generosity. But if the devil can get you thinking scarcity, he can get you thinking scarcity, then rather than finding the solution to all these problems, we introvert and we try and live within the means of the problem. We have, if energy is truly impacting the globe, which I'm not convinced it is, but if it's truly impacting the globe, then there's something out there that's greater than that. There's some power out there that's greater than that. And we discovered it in atomic nuclear plants and that sort of thing for electricity. But it created an after problem that we don't know what to do with, and that's the spent cells. But there is a solution to that. But rather than finding the solution to that, we introvert and say, oh, close all those plants down. Close all those plants down. There's an alternative somehow to coal. I mean, there's only so much coal on Earth. We can't keep burning all the coal. There's no doubt about that. But there's an alternative to that somewhere. See, there's an alternative to these things. But if we think scarcity, we won't find them. And it's the same thing with our Christianity. It's the same thing with our health. If we think of an abundant God that can do anything. I mean, if you read some of the stuff that George Washington wrote that you'll never see in your schools and stuff, he would say, I know this was divine providence that we won this battle. It was divine providence that we won this battle because we fasted and prayed. That was George Washington. You don't even know this. I don't think you know this. But England was mounting a huge attack to come and take America back after we freed ourselves in 1776. Did you know that? They were mounting a huge, they were coming back with every ship they had. They were taking these colonies back. These little fruits weren't going to get this freedom that they wanted. They were not going to get this. Did you know that? They were mounting a huge, attack. They had put all their resources together. They were even working with other foreign countries to do this. And they were coming back to take the colonies back. And then a little short guy with a problem, they think gastronomically, had a problem in that he was in prison because he was nuts. He was a rebellious nut. And he escaped from prison and began to go throughout Europe and found 100,000 people to follow him, and he attacked Britain in Waterloo. Did you know that? He attacked France, Brussels, everybody at Waterloo. And all those resources they had mounted to come and fight America with and take the colonies back, all had to go to fight Napoleon at Waterloo. You see that? Divine providence. God wanted this country here. And we're letting people steal it from us because of scarcity instead of seeing an abundant God. We're afraid we will lose what little we have. We cling to what we've got. I remember and you've seen this, the way that the African people used to capture monkeys so they could send them over to our zoos. Do you know that? They would put a bunch of nuts and fruit in a jar that the monkey could get his hand in, but he couldn't get his hand back out once he grabbed the fruit. And he would hold on to the stuff, and then of course that was tethered to the tree. And he actually caught himself, and he wouldn't let go. And they actually had to tie a rope around the monkey and break the jar in order to get him free so that they could. But the monkey actually captured himself because of his fear of scarcity and his desire of selfishness to make sure he got what was in that jar. And he actually captured himself. And that's what the devil's doing to American Christianity today. We're so busy trying to do, we're so busy trying to just survive with what we've got that we just keep shrinking. And Christianity isn't about that. God said you go out. You go out. And we've got to begin to think about ourselves. What am I doing? What do I fear? What do I fear about sharing the gospel with somebody? They won't like me? I'll lose my job? I'm living proof. I'm living proof. I shared the gospel at Campbell's and they just kept promoting me to where I impacted more and more people until I was responsible for tens of thousands of people around the United States. But they could have fired me. And I was prepared for that all the time. Not financially, but in my heart. What I honestly was not prepared for was coming into this community and seeing the difficulty that we would find in penetrating this community for Christ. A year before we came here, they asked us to interim at a Baptist church, of all places, a Baptist church in Blair. We saw it grow from 15 to over 135 in 6 months. And I don't understand this. I don't understand what I'm against here. And I've been at it for 15 plus years. I don't understand what I'm against. I don't know what I've done to people. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand. But I know this, that I'm going to continue to teach the Word as it is in this book. And I'm going to continue that as much as God will allow me to do that. I will continue to reach out to this whole country in Christianity, that we do not need to continue in this path of scarcity. The first time I heard about scarcity and abundance, I was talking to a guy named Covey. I don't know if anybody knows Stephen Covey, The 7 Greatest Habits. He was a famous author. He's passed away now. And he and I were speaking at the same thing in Nashville, Tennessee, a great big, huge thing we were speaking in. And I was walking down the hall talking, and nobody was around us. We were in this like tunnel going down from the speaking area down to the book signing and all that kind of stuff. And I was walking with him, and I thought, well, I'll just start witnessing to him, because he talked about the thing that would destroy America is the move from abundance to scarcity. He spoke on that. He said, you know, he was kind of a positive thinking kind of guy. He had a big organization with thousands of people working for him, but he was telling me about scarcity and abundance and how he was really concerned that this was going to destroy America. And I was witnessing to him, and he was a Mormon. He was a Mormon. I tried my darndest to make Christianity as clear as I could to him. But he had the power to say, hey, I'm never going to speak in the same room with this guy. Anything, you know, he could have done anything. But I saw an opportunity that God had put me in a place to share my faith. And God has given me that opportunity. I shared my faith with Dan Quayle. Have you ever heard of Dan Quayle? Vice President of the United States. You guys haven't even heard of him? Oh, yeah, you've heard of him. I had the opportunity to share my faith with Dan Quayle. What's the guy, oh my gosh. He and I sat together for 4 hours and talked. And why can't I remember his name? The Contra guy, Iran Contra guy, what's his name? He's a Christian. Ollie North. Ollie North and I got to sit and talk about Christianity for 4 hours together, he and I. I was opening up the books and he was signing his name in the books, and I was opening up the books and he was signing his name in the books. We sat and talked for 4 hours. I don't know why. I don't know why God has given me these opportunities to be in places where I can talk to these people about Christ. Other than the fact that I believe, it's not because I'm intelligent or not because I'm obviously not so capable of putting organizations together or anything like that. But it's simply because I'm just kind of naive enough to do whatever God tells me to do and kind of ignore the consequences. And that's what he was telling Joshua. He says, no man will be able to stand against you. Nobody can stand against me when I'm standing with God. Nobody can stand against me when I'm standing with God. The worst thing they can do is take my life and glory to God. I'll get to go to heaven. But go on to the next scripture. I want you to see this. We're never going to get very far. Joshua, only be strong and very courageous. This is the second time he repeats this, and it's interesting because later the people call him and tell him the same thing. But only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do everything in accordance with the entire law which Moses my servant commanded you to do. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, so that you may prosper and be successful wherever you go. Now, he spoke of the law, and of course the law was what they had at that time. But he wasn't talking about the mechanics necessary of the law, but Deuteronomy 6, where it says, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength. If you get to that position, nobody can stand against you. Nobody can take anything away from you. The devil can't. Sickness, disease, finances, relationships. If you love the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength. But he doesn't just end it there. See, he doesn't just end it there. He goes on to 8, and this is what he says. This is how you're going to do that, Joshua. This is how you're going to do that. And go on to 1:8, Jeremy. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you should read it and meditate on it day and night. And the word meditate in Hebrew is actually like repeated murmuring. Repeated murmuring. And I'll tell you what, if you've had this same challenge that I've had, is that our repeated murmuring is usually in the negative. Oh, I won't be able to do that, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. I've had to fight that off my whole life. I'll never be able to do this. How can I do that? How can I do this? How can I do that? How can we get together? Oh, they're always going to be like that. They'll probably do this. They'll probably do that. You guys do that? How could they ever promote me? You know? When I got my first promotion to the United States, I went into the office and they were just going through this thing where they were starting to talk about gender sensitivity, and we had to start teaching gender sensitivity, and they were asking me to be the head of training for the whole United States. And I went into the vice president's office and I said, can I shut the door? And they said, yeah. And I said, whatever you do, if you promote me to this position, I will not ever support, never organize, or never ever teach that being a homosexual is just another choice. I said, I will not do that. I said, there's a lot of things that we've gone over the brink on in this nation, but I'm not going over that brink. So if you want me in this position, you can put me in this position. But if you expect me to ever do that, and that person said to me, they said, don't worry, I'll have somebody else organize that, I'll have somebody else do that. I do not expect you to do that, Jim. I understand where you're coming from. They knew where I was coming from. But I had favor from God. But I went into that meeting thinking, oh my gosh, I probably won't get this promotion because of that. I'll probably be shut down, put on a plane, and sent back home, right? But you got to, and I put that thought away. I said, no, Lord, you brought me here, you put me here, you've brought me to this position. It's only right that I tell them the truth about how I feel about this and not wait till I'm promoted and then later refuse to do it. Just be right up front about it. But I had that argument. I don't know if you have those arguments with yourself. But we speak things into other people's lives. Some of you weren't here last week, but I talked about, in the past couple of weeks, I've talked about what do we speak into the lives of our kids? What have we spoken into them? Oh, you can't remember things. Your memory's not good. Oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. Or, oh, you're just not, you're all thumbs. Or, you know, you don't have a green thumb. Or, you know, whatever we tell our kids, that unfortunately does two things. One, it gives them an impression of who they are and what they can do. But it also, unfortunately, gives them an excuse why they can't do certain things. I mean, I went through this with my daughter. with math. She was at a Christian school, failing math miserably. Because for some reason the teacher was not able to translate those thoughts to her. And I just sat down with her for hours and hours every night until she understood math, and she says, oh, this is easy. But I had to keep telling her, don't look at the red marks on the page. Look at all the answers you got right where there aren't red marks. Let's talk about each time we come how few red marks there are and how many ones you got correct. And little by little, her courage and her ability, and she went on to college in accounting. I just had to do the same thing with one of her daughters. It's somebody had told them, you're not good at this, or you're just not good at math, you're just not good at science, you're just not good at whatever. I sat down with my granddaughter, went through science with her the other day to help her catch up on some stuff she was struggling with, and you guys have heard this, I think I told her, and you probably all present. But the science was all about climate change and evolution and all this, and I said, we don't believe in this, right? You understand that? It's important that you understand we don't believe in this. That God created the earth, not some accident. And that continuously science is being proven wrong. And I think I said this last week, possibly, I don't know, that the thought when I went to college was there was a big bang and the whole universe was slowing down as it exploded out. Well, then they ran into a perplexing problem a few years ago where they found out it's speeding up. So how can it get faster if the initial bang, if you're familiar with an explosion, when they set off a piece of dynamite in Colorado, we don't eventually feel it in Omaha, right? Because it weakens as it leaves Colorado. So we're not feeling the explosions that they're doing. In fact, we don't feel an explosion that happens in Lincoln, Nebraska, 40 miles away. So this goes against their whole thinking. I'm watching these two scientists talk about it, and the first thing they said they're going to take off the table was the belief that there was some sort of some kind of divine intervention in this thing. They said, we can't believe that. We'll never accept that. They're going to find something other than God. So we just have to really say, where am I headed with this? Where am I headed? Because as I said to my daughter, and as I said to my granddaughter, the opposite of what they were being told by somebody else. And then we worked it together. It got resolved. We have a Father in heaven that nothing good, everything, only good and perfect things come from Him. Nothing bad comes from Him. Every good and perfect gift, right, comes from heaven above, from the Father of light. And there's no turning or variation in Him, right? I don't know if you're working on that scripture or not. I encourage you to work on that scripture and the other one in 1 John that I gave you, or 3 John that I gave you. I encourage you to work on those scriptures. Because, see, we have a Father in heaven that wants to do with you what I did with my daughter with math. He wants to do with you what I did with science with my granddaughter. He wants to do that. If I want those good things, think how much greater His desire for you to have good things is. But He said to Joshua, He said, you're going to invade this other nation. And you're going to take back the inheritance that's been stolen from us and from the Israelites. And He says, but this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall read it and meditate on it day and night, so that you be careful to do everything in accordance with all that's written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will be successful. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be terrified or dismayed or intimidated, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I'll close with this thought. When John the Baptist began to baptize people, he was either an Essene or a Zealot. There was Sadducees, Pharisees, and Zealots, which the Essenes were part of the Zealots. And those were the three sects at the time. They were trying to win back Jerusalem from Rome. The Maccabees, the family of Maccabees tried it for a while, had some limited success. They were trying to win back Jerusalem from Rome. The Pharisees were doing it through the church, if I can call it that, by watering down what the church believed, focusing on the people and their laws and their rules, trying to keep the church alive by infestation, if you can call it that. That's what the Pharisees were. They were trying to continue to control the people, and Herod was fine with that because he was half Greek and half Jew. The Sadducees took on the Greek thinking that we have a God and he's not Zeus, but we have a God and he's put us here on earth and he's removed himself and he lets things go as they go and he checks in on them once in a while. And as he checks in on it, but there's no eternal life. When you die, you die. The purpose of life is just having a little bit better life and civilization here. And Herod was okay with that. But the Zealots lived out in the desert. And they would have these little interactions where they'd come in and kill a couple of Roman soldiers or whatever. They'd try and take a little bit of Jerusalem back. And then they'd run back into the mountains. You know what was the mark of the Essenes? Or Essenes, whatever they call them. And that's what the Dead Sea Scrolls were written because they hid in the caves of Qumran. You know what was different about them? They studied and memorized the Word of God. The Pharisees didn't know their God. He was the gorilla that walked into the rooms and they did not even see it, right? They were so focused on the technicalities that they missed the gorilla in the room. The Sadducees weren't even looking for the gorilla in the room. The Zealots were trying to understand their God. They wanted to truly understand their God. We have no real remnants of the Pharisees. We have no real remnants other than the Bible and the history of the Bible. We have no artifacts really from the Sadducees either. But we have the scrolls of Qumran that prove that this has not changed even from the Jewish priest. God wants you to know this, to discover who he is, his character, because he knows that what you murmur in yourself, that's why he gave us tongues, so we wouldn't keep murmuring all that crud into ourselves. We can speak the heavenly language, and we don't know what to say. If I start to have an ill thought, I begin to speak in tongues. I want that ill thought to go away as fast as it possibly can. I know that whenever I'm tempted to sin or fall away or do something wrong or whatever, all I got to do is pray in the Spirit. And that goes. Anytime I have a thought that you're going to have a problem. The other day I was aerating my yard, and it's about a half an acre, it's a large yard. Paul was there helping me with my son-in-law. He had the day off this Friday. And we were going back and forth, and I turned a certain way, and it just tore the side of my face. I don't know why, the side of my face. But it's hard to handle when the things you've never done that. But it kind of tore up my face. And I try and do more than I should at my age. And it tore my face. And suddenly I had all these white flashes in my eye. And later I looked up, it's called retina detachment or something like that, or some whatever it's called. It's part of your eye actually separates when it happens. And they said, usually it can be so bad that you should go to the doctor right away, or it can be not as bad, and it heals over about a year's period of time. But you actually strain your eye to a certain extent somehow. It tore, separating that fiber inside. And I just would not receive that. I would not receive that. And I went all day, the rest of Friday, all day yesterday, and last night, still seeing these flashes. And I just kept saying to myself, this is not of my God. He made my body. My body is just incredibly made, as David said. And it can heal itself. And I believe with all my heart that I'm in the process of healing. And now it's lessening and lessening. Now, somebody might say, well, that's just, what happens, for instance, but it's almost gone. But I am just focused on believing that, that I have a God that created a body that's going forth to do what He's called it to do. And His word says, I am the God that healeth. He doesn't say, I'm the God that makes you sick. He says, I am the God that healeth you. By my stripes you're healed. And I know that there's people in here and family members in here that are struggling with certain health issues and stuff. You've got to become convinced. You've got to become convinced in your heart. And the only way your heart can change is by the Word of God. The only way you can renew your mind is by the Word of God. The only way your strength in your faith will be increased is by the Word of God. So, we're going to take communion now. Shut that down, Jared. We're going to take